Overnight, all the plants on Earth mutated. The bonsai banyan tree in my home grew 200 meters tall overnight, turning my house into a treehouse. I hoarded a large amount of supplies and secluded myself at home, living a life free from worldly strife. I groggily opened my eyes, a domineering spicy aroma lingering at the tip of my nose. Turning my head, I saw a bowl of leftover instant noodles sitting on the table. After enduring years of barely edible grain buns, how could I resist such temptation? The steaming hot noodle soup still had some warmth left, and for a moment, I couldn't care about anything else, lifting it up and bringing it to my mouth. It smells so good, and it tastes even better. The savory and slightly spicy flavor filled my mouth, and I was so moved that tears almost fell. Like a starving ghost, I rummaged through the house for anything edible and devoured it all before I could muster the mood to ponder my current predicament. That's right, it's rebirth. 3 months from now, all plants on Earth will mutate overnight. Some of them evolved to be aggressive, while others underwent changes in their traits. Most grains, fruits, and vegetables have grown larger, but their taste has become unbearable. Back then, there was plenty to eat, and people rarely starved to death, but human desires couldn't be satisfied merely by not starving. Who would willingly eat something as dry and hard to chew as tree bark after being accustomed to the delicious and sweet fruits and vegetables that have been carefully cultivated? Anyway, I couldn't really stand it, often searching with others for rare, decent-tasting fruits. In the end, I was accidentally killed by a mutated plant. Then it returned to before the plants mutated. My first reaction was to stock up on rice and vegetables, stock up on fruits, stock up on seasonings, stockpile all edible food. After my parents passed away, they left me a substantial inheritance, so I quit my job and immediately started shopping. The plants had mutated, but the animals remained largely unchanged, so I was still able to eat meat in the following years. However, even the animals found the feed made from mutated plants unpalatable, and their rate of weight gain significantly decreased. At that time, the price of meat had soared to the heavens, and a chicken weighing 1.5 pounds could fetch as much as 3,000 yuan, making it unaffordable for most people. But even though I have a lot of money, I can't buy much meat. All the food was rationed per person just like in the last century. Every month, I counted the days, waiting for the meat supply to arrive, to comfort my stomach that had been retching from eating dry grain balls. The dry food balls are made by mashing mutated grains and vegetables into balls. People eat this as their staple food every day. Because all ingredients except for meat had become unpalatable, the food industry suffered an unprecedented blow. Everyone categorized the food into 3 levels: regular bad, super bad, and the taste of hell. I ordered 20 large freezers, filled 10 of them with various frozen meats and quick frozen foods, and half a freezer with ice cream. Large chunks of beef and lamb, whole sides of pork, cleaned chicken, duck, and goose meat, along with their eggs, filled every corner. I hope to always have the freedom to enjoy meat in the days to come. The remaining 10 freezers are used to store various processed frozen vegetables and fruits. Fruits and vegetables are different from meat, they can't be preserved by freezing, so I bought specially processed frozen fruits and vegetables, and then purchased a large quantity of dried vegetables and fruits. In addition, there are rice, flour, oil, biscuits, bread, instant noodles, dried fruits, jerky, ham sausages, cola, potato chips, chocolate, candies, as well as various seasonings and canned pickles. I directly ordered each category from the supermarket, stocking up by the box for each one. I ordered too much, and the boss even offered to deliver it personally, but I declined. I specifically bought a truck, hired people to load the purchased items onto the vehicle, transport them to the designated location, and then I would go over to drive the truck to the rented warehouse. I don't want others to know I bought so many things, so I'm being very careful. But these things can only last for a little over a decade at most, so I also bought a large batch of compressed biscuits, military rations, canned food, and so on, ensuring that I won't have to force myself to gnaw on grain balls for the rest of my life. The numbers in my account were dwindling like flowing water. I took stock of the money I had and listed several properties under my name for sale online. After the plants went wild, prices followed suit. $10 later weren't worth as much as $1 now. So I have to spend all my money before the currency devalues. I've stocked up on a lot of daily necessities, from various household appliances and bedding down to soap, toilet paper, and sanitary pads. It's almost enough to open a general store. After the large-scale mutation of plants, the power and water systems were also affected, but repairs were carried out quickly, and most of the systems were restored within less than half a month. Preparedness averts peril. I bought 100 barrels of water and even purchased 2 sets of solar panels and generators. Some things are not easy to buy, such as diesel fuel needed for generators, various common medicines, and trauma medications. These are not allowed to be purchased in large quantities, and I had to put in a lot of effort to obtain some. Every day, I frantically buy on my phone, purchasing everything I can think of in large quantities, constantly checking and filling in the gaps, until the balance in my bank account dwindled to a pitiful 3-digit number. I was contentedly guarding the fully stocked warehouse, pondering where I should live next. After much deliberation, it seems I only have one choice left. About 7 or 8 years ago, my father built a new 3-story villa in our hometown. It looks very stylish and very safe on the outside. High walls are equipped with electric fences, and the villa has a fully automated defense system. Without my permission, not even a mosquito can get in. The entire house is cast with earthquake-resistant materials, equipped with steel doors over 10 centimeters thick and tempered glass windows. It is said that even in the face of a magnitude 9 earthquake or a category 15 typhoon, it would remain unscathed. This makes me, a young single woman, feel very reassured. He's a wealthy man, after all, so of course, safety is a top priority. I still remember how my father's face lit up with excitement as he introduced this villa to my mother and me. Thinking of them, my mood dipped for a moment. Several years had passed since I last returned, and the house was covered in a thick layer of dust. I hired someone to clean the place inside and out, installed a set of solar panels and a generator, and filled the villa's built-in water storage tanks to the brim. This water is reserved for bathing and washing clothes. After tidying up the villa, I would sneak out every night under the cover of darkness to drive back and transport the supplies. The villa was well situated, a good distance from the nearest villages, allowing me to transport goods back and forth frequently without drawing attention. An entire warehouse's worth of stuff, it wore me out to the point of near death. But when I think that these are the capital for my future life, and I no longer have to live as frugally as in my past life, where even eating something delicious meant licking the bowl clean, I am filled with motivation again. In the end, the 320 square meter villa, including the basement, was completely filled with boxes of supplies. My heart has completely settled down. Because the space was too cluttered, my living area was reduced to just over 10 square meters. The sofa, cabinet, and table were all crammed together, leaving no space for my beloved banyan tree pot, which sadly had to sit next to my bed. This banyan tree was originally a potted plant I picked up while wandering around the flower and bird market. Many people considered it unlucky to have a banyan tree at home, so the flower seller couldn't sell it and just discarded it by the roadside. I thought this little tree had quite a poetic charm, so I took it home to nurture it and gave it a name, D.A. Rome. The tiring days are over, and now I spend every day at home reading and surfing the internet, occasionally going out for a walk. Oh, is this Ran? It's been so long, you've grown into such a young lady. When did you get back? Come over to my place for a meal when you have time. I have lived in the city with my parents since I was born. My elders passed away early, and I only return once every few years. Without my parents by my side to remind me, I couldn't remember who these elders were at all. I could only smile politely and respond with a few words. I really couldn't handle such situations, so I gradually stopped going out and stayed at home, waiting for that day to come. Plants mutated during the night, and people woke from their dreams to find the world had undergone a dramatic transformation. I sat by the bedroom window with a cup of coffee, ready to stay up all night and witness history. And then, I accidentally fell asleep. I don't know if it was because the lounge chair was too comfortable, or if the habit of going to bed early and waking up early had set my biological clock, but my eyelids uncontrollably closed, and I fell asleep without knowing when. It wasn't until the sunlight hit my face that I remembered something in my half-asleep state, jolting me awake. I looked out the window and was shocked, my eyes widening in disbelief. The vast, billowing clouds drifted across the azure sky, while the faint, distant mountains stretched endlessly. Rows of villages shrank to the size of chessboards, huddled pitifully into a small patch amidst a sea of green. The large-scale mutation of plants arrived as expected. But something seems a bit off. I stared dumbfounded at the ground, which was at least 200 meters away, completely stunned. What's going on? How did I turn into Rapunzel? When I woke up, my position had inexplicably risen by 200 meters. This height is merely that of a 60-story building, but tall buildings have elevators, while trees do not. I ran to the skylight of the villa to look outside and finally determined the reason. A tree of unknown species grew rapidly, lifting my villa into the sky overnight. Moreover, it was very considerate, not damaging any facilities in the house, and even the yard was lifted intact. Now, above my head is a canopy-like tree crown, surrounded by hanging aerial roots. My house is at the top of the trunk, like a natural treehouse nestled in the Primeval forest. Compared to it, any ocean view house pales in comparison. The value of this house has increased at least tenfold now. I have to say, if it weren't for the lingering doubts I have about this mutated plant, I would have already started dancing with excitement. With food and drink, and living high up on a powerful mutated plant far from the ground, I can practically live a carefree life from now on, no longer worrying about my safety. The species of this tree looks so familiar, it seems like. I turned my head in contemplation and indeed saw an empty flower pot. The potted banyan tree that was there before is gone. I knew it. Apart from the potted plants in my bedroom, where would a banyan tree come from near my house? As expected of a domesticated tree, it has grown to such a size without damaging my floor, foundation, or the structure of the villa. When I realized the tree beneath my feet was the potted plant from my home, I breathed a sigh of relief. Probably because I raised Da Rong from a young age, I feel that even though he has mutated, he wouldn't harm me. Last night, with all its commotion, I didn't feel a thing, and there was no sign of any damage at home. It carefully emerged from the flower pot, grew up, and sheltered both me and the house within its trunk. I am willing to believe that it is friendly towards me. At this moment, some indistinct clamor arose from beneath the tree. I looked down, but the distance was too great. The people below appeared smaller than ants to me, making it impossible to see what was happening. Fortunately, I had bought some miscellaneous items when I was stocking up, and I remember there was a telescope among them. I could only see the people below clearly with the telescope in my hand. There are many plants in the countryside. Apart from the roofs, which can vaguely show their original appearance, every other corner is filled with greenery. Villagers discovered an astonishingly large banyan tree, their yards blocked by wildly growing plants, making it impossible to gather together, so they climbed onto their rooftops to shout to each other. They opened their mouths wide, pointing and gesturing at the big banyan tree. From my angle, I could see them clearly, but they couldn't see me. The phone kept vibrating incessantly. I picked up my phone, opened the WeChat group organized by the village committee, and the rapidly scrolling messages were like a flood on the screen. They anxiously asked each other what was happening, some worried about their relatives living outside, some said the vegetables planted at their doorsteps had entangled the houses, and a few mentioned the abruptly towering banyan tree. Suddenly someone mentioned me. "Isn't that the Mo family's house over there? Moran, are you still there?" I hesitated for a moment and didn't reply. The big banyan tree provided a rare natural shelter, and with my ample supplies, I had no intention of descending from the tree. Since I don't interact with the villagers, there's no need for them to know I'm here. I closed WeChat, opened a web page, and several news notifications popped up. Abnormal plant growth, large areas of towns turning into forests, roads everywhere blocked by trees. The current situation is unclear. We urge the public to stay at home and avoid going out to risk danger. In case of an emergency, immediately call the police. Biological cleansing. The apocalypse approaches. Disasters roar, plants rise. This is the wrath of Mother Earth. Should humanity reflect on itself? Just like in the previous life, the great mutation of plants was beyond people's comprehension, and all the news online was about this. I browsed through the posts, where many people shared videos and photos they had taken. The comments below were filled with either panic or excitement, all discussing this unprecedented situation. Some say the end is coming, and believing in a certain God can eliminate pain and troubles. I promptly clicked the report button. Someone panicked and said that the flowers they kept at home had also mutated and started spitting at them, asking everyone what they should do. I couldn't help him, so I just gave him a like. Someone posted the fruits grown in their own field, where apples that were originally the size of a fist had swollen several times, almost as big as a human head. Many people below urged him to take a bite and asked what it tasted like. I laughed. After the apocalypse, plants generally grew larger, but they either tasted like chewing wax, like sugarcane drained of its juice, or they turned into bizarre flavors. Apples, I remember their taste, like a skyward pointing chili pepper soaked in soy sauce. Sure enough, not long after, the original poster updated with 2 photos and a long string of expletives. One photo showed a bite of apple spat out, and the other was his lips swollen like sausages. I laughed together with the netizens, ha 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 ha. Some people worry that as fruits and vegetables grow larger, most of them will lose their good taste. What will humans eat then? I sighed. The unmutated food was limited, and once it was gone, people's daily staple became grain balls made from mutated plants. The feeling of something so unpalatable that it made me roll my eyes, yet I desperately gulped water to swallow it down, occupies most of my memories. So after being reborn, I've been cooking for myself in various ways, hoping to erase that feeling from my mind. The food I have stored now, if properly preserved, is enough to last me a lifetime. I'd rather die than take another bite of food made from mutated plant. I opened the window and took a deep breath of the fresh oxygen produced by the ocean of plants. The sunlight leaped out from between the clouds, the crowds dispersed, and all was silent. I took out my phone and captured this moment. But somehow my fingers loosened, and the phone slipped from my hand, falling freely. It's over, I gasped inwardly, thinking that if it fell from a height of 7 or 8 meters, the phone would probably be ruined. Unexpectedly, a shadow darted down swiftly and snatched my phone. I was stunned, watching as a previously still aerial root came to life, curling around the fallen phone and delivering it to me. I took the phone, grabbed this aerial root, and shook the branch as if shaking hands. The branch seemed to respond to me, swaying slightly as well. "Da wrong?" I tentatively called out. It swayed again. Oh my God! I widened my eyes. This plant has evolved so remarkably that the big banyan has actually developed self-awareness. Although some plants may attack humans, they only act on instinct and cannot interact with people autonomously like the big banyan tree, nor do they respond to what I say. I was extremely surprised and delighted in my heart, and at the same time, I recalled some things. In my previous life, the big banyan tree also underwent a mutation. It wasn't very tall, but its roots extended over half of my house. Looking back now, it might be because in my previous life, I lived on the top floor of a flat, and the big banyan tree couldn't reach the soil, so it didn't absorb enough nutrients, which is why it didn't undergo such a significant transformation as it has now. I never expected that living in the wrong place would delay me from getting close to those mutated plants. I sighed deeply, feeling a mix of complexity and relief in my heart. Being reborn is my greatest fortune. With the experience from my past life and the supermutated banyan tree, I am determined to live a better life this time. I played the branch holding game with Da Rong for a while, then got ready to use the restroom and wash up. When I lifted the toilet lid, I suddenly froze. I gazed deeply at the toilet, pondering where it might lead now. Should I pray that when Da Rong digs up my foundation, he also digs up the new independent septic tank I just installed? If it had no consciousness, it wouldn't matter. These external things would just be fertilizer to it. But now it's conscious, and I feel like I can't use it as a toilet anymore. I pressed the flush and listened carefully to the sound of the water. I couldn't tell if it sounded any different from before. I couldn't hold it any longer, and despite the awkwardness, I resignedly sat down on the toilet. After washing my hands and coming out, I felt like I couldn't face Da Rong anymore. The water pipes and electrical wires were all broken, and it seemed like they would never be fixed again. The water I'm using now is stored in the water tank, and the electricity is automatically supplied by the backup power source. The canopy of the big banyan tree blocked most of the sunlight, so the solar panels didn't store much electricity, but it was enough for me to use. Plus, I have a diesel generator and have stored a considerable amount of diesel, so I don't have to worry about energy issues for at least 5 years. I had a conversation with DA Rome, asking if it could block the villa's courtyard wall. After all, 200 meters isn't particularly high. What if someone else also has a telescope? Being discreet can avoid a lot of trouble. DA Rome understood my meaning and mobilized many aerial routes, hanging them outside the house like a curtain, thoughtfully leaving the bedroom window open for me to look out. I happily sang it a song, and the aerial routes in the room instantly vanished. My days after that were quite pleasant. Although I am alone, with DA Rome's company, I no longer feel lonely. I cooked various delicacies for myself while occasionally teasing the branches of the big banyan tree, showcasing my terrible singing voice to it, and even teaching it how to do chores. DA Rome was like a pet with no temper, usually slow-moving but very obedient. In just one short week, it learned to automatically mop the floor for me. I looked up a lot of information online, and sometimes I wonder, the big banyan is a plant, its structure is different from humans, it might not even understand what I'm saying. Is it possible that the so-called humanity and emotions I attribute to it are all my own projections? Does it merely judge my emotions from the hormones I secrete and then respond accordingly? But setting aside scientific explanations, I still prefer to believe that this big banyan tree, which indulges and accompanies me, has feelings for me. I washed a bowl of small persimmons to eat, and as I ate, I sighed with DA Rome. My stock of fresh fruits and vegetables is running low. After the plant mutations, even seeds from before can't grow unmutated fruits anymore. These original, natural fruits are truly becoming fewer and fewer with each one eaten. Listening to my words, the big banyan tree extended a branch, leaned over, and coiled around a persimmon. I laughed and joked with it. "You want some too? Go ahead, take it." Unexpectedly, after a while, it brought a dozen small persimmons and placed them in front of me. I am very puzzled. All the little persimmons have just been eaten by me. Where did it get these from? I asked it several times like this, and in the end, it stuck a branch into a small persimmon right in front of me. In the blink of an eye, the little persimmon continued to grow on its branch, blossoming and bearing fruit. A whole branch of ripe persimmons was placed in my hand. I widened my eyes, my mind racing with a torrent of thoughts, all screaming, "Incredible! Is this the legendary divine tree that can bear all kinds of fruits? Then wouldn't I soon be able to enjoy fruit freedom?" Once again, I couldn't help but regret my previous life's lack of food. Then, I took out all the vegetables, fruits, and seeds, and asked the great banyan to accelerate their growth. At first, I thought buying seeds was useless, but somehow I ended up buying a small packet of each variety. Now it has come in very handy. I took out the seeds of strawberries, watermelons, and grapes, and Darong easily planted them all. However, it is quite laborious to grow fruit-bearing trees like peach and pear from seeds. Unless it's grafted with the stem of a fruit, then it can bear a single fruit. That day, I blissfully devoured a whole bowl of strawberries. The rampant growth of plants has greatly impacted people's lives. First, there were restrictions on travel and transportation, as many roads and railways were damaged by plants that had emerged from underground. Basic traffic was only barely restored after emergency repairs. Secondly, the traits of most plants have changed. Potatoes have become as hard as stone, mint emits a pungent gasoline smell, and willow trees can actually swat passing birds on their own. Even the same plant can evolve into different forms in different regions. Oranges grown south of the Huai River are oranges, but when grown north of the Huai, they become trifoliate oranges. Now, if an orange is grown in the south, it becomes a durian, and if grown in the north, it turns into a stone. The internet is filled with lamentations, and now a new way of flaunting wealth has emerged, posting videos of oneself eating non-mutated fruits and vegetables. I really want to show off the big bowl of strawberries, grapes, and cherries in my hand, but I think I'll just let it go. Keep a low profile and quietly make a fortune. The authorities made great efforts to reassure the public, and although there was fear among the people, they remained hopeful. It's just that the current conditions are too rigid, and people's lives are truly difficult. The village beneath the great banyan tree occasionally echoed with the sounds of quarrels. The land that the farmers relied on for their livelihood was ruined. Not only was there no hope of harvesting crops, but even the courage to take a look at the past was hard to muster. Once, a villager ran out of vegetables at home and wanted to pick some from the vegetable field, but was driven back by the pea shooter. It was said to be like experiencing a hailstorm, leaving people covered in bruises. I've been lurking in the village's WeChat group, so I always get to hear the juicy gossip. Down below, they started arguing again. The woman's shrill voice was hysterical, and even I could hear some of it. A girl from one family was so severely deprived that she went to steal vegetables in the middle of the night out of hunger, only to be beaten all over by the vegetables. The girl's mother was nearly on the verge of collapse, crying and cursing her husband and in-laws while holding her daughter, going door to door begging for medicine. Ordinary households are lucky to have some fever-reducing and anti-inflammatory medications on hand. How could they possibly have medicine for treating external injuries? I held the binoculars and secretly looked down below. Looking at the little girl covered in wounds and the desperate mother, my heart felt a sharp pang, and I was filled with a deep sense of unease. Back when I was stockpiling, I bought a lot of medicine, including a whole box of Yunnan bayarrow powder. The insurance pill inside is a good thing. In this village almost sealed off in the mountains, it might be the only thing that can save the girl. But the reason I now have a safe and peaceful life is all thanks to Da Rong and my own concealment. Once I'm exposed, the villagers will surely keep a close eye on me and Darong. At that time, Darong's uniqueness might be discovered. Although the Great Banyan is strong, I dare not gamble on whether someone might go to great lengths to eliminate it and use it for research. I just can't stand by and watch unfortunate people die without helping. I took a bottle of medicine and handed it to Darong, repeating the instructions over and over again. The branches of the big banyan tree swayed before my eyes, as if to reassure me, then wrapped around the medicine bottle and vanished in an instant. It didn't take long before it came back, proudly giving me a heart gesture as if to show off its achievement. I laughed out loud. Did it learn this by being by my side every day, staring at the phone with me? The commotion in the village had gradually died down before I fetched the medicine, and now it was completely silent. I had Darong give the medicine to the mother in a secluded place, but I don't know if she has used it for her child yet. I lurked in the WeChat group for a few days, but there was no extra information. It seems the little girl is fine now. For the past half-month, the continuous rain has been falling intermittently, sometimes heavy, sometimes light, but today it has finally stopped completely. The canopy of the big banyan tree is vast enough to block out the sky and the sun. On a regular day, I can't even get a bit of sunlight, let alone get rained on. The aerial roots of the banyan tree had formed a small forest, and fortunately, my house was a good distance from the nearest neighbor, otherwise their house would have been in trouble. I lounged in the recliner, gazing at the scenery outside the window while scooping homemade yogurt fruit mix into my mouth with a spoon. My mouth was filled with the sweetness of fruit and the richness of yogurt, and I thought to myself that such a large bowl of fruit salad, if placed outside now, would probably fetch thousands of yuan. I am truly extravagant. I originally wanted to find a show to pass the time, but somehow, I felt a bit restless and couldn't get into it at all. The big banyan tree also seemed off. Its branches, usually slow and deliberate in their movements, were unusually restless today. I asked the big banyan what was wrong, and its branches rustled as it rolled out a black-shelled bug for me to see. I endured the tingling sensation on my scalp and looked carefully, but couldn't recognize it. So, I took a photo and uploaded it to Baidu, and found out the name of the bug. The banyan 8-star longhorn beetle specializes in eating the bark and trunks of banyan trees. Da Rong, are you infested with bugs? I asked in surprise. I thought that a mutated plant of the level of the Great Banyan wouldn't be affected by any insects. The big banyan tree nodded its branches aggrievedly and pulled out another moth to show me. I checked, and the grayish-white silkworm moth feeds on banyan leaves. My expression turned grave. Since its mutation, the banyan tree's branches and trunk had grown significantly stronger. After all, it was a branch that could move freely, incomparable to the ordinary branches of the past. The number of bugs must be quite large to make DA Rome so anxious. I did stock up on some insecticides and the like, but the quantity is not much, only 2 boxes. Such a small amount compared to the massive body of the banyan tree is truly a drop in the bucket. But having something is better than having nothing. I brought an N95 mask and protective goggles, and I wore rubber gloves on my hands. Poured all the insecticide into a large barrel, then filled a large sprayer with it. I personally taught Darong how to use it, instructing it to spray the medicine where the insects were most concentrated. Insecticide is limited, so we need to use it sparingly. I posted a notice online about buying insecticide, but no one replied for a long time. I was contemplating whether to use something rare to lure out the person with the insecticide when the branches left by the banyan tree in the house suddenly went into a frenzy. I was stunned and quickly asked, "What's wrong, Darong?" Of course, the big banyan tree couldn't answer me. Its branches gently nudged my waist, trying to steer me toward the center of the villa. I was utterly baffled and tried hard to turn my head to look back. The sky had grown unusually dark at some point, with a mass of black clouds looming in the distance. Is it going to rain heavily again? No, that's not right. I broke free from the banyan tree's branches and grabbed the binoculars to look over. The overwhelming black clouds were not clouds at all, but swarms of insect. It's a plague of insect. A chill ran down my spine, spreading throughout my body, leaving me stiff and my heart clenched. Perhaps the older generation has witnessed locust plagues, but I have never seen so many insects in my life. My first reaction was, what about DA Rome? The presence of some bugs on its body made it extremely uncomfortable, and now the number of these bugs. I dare not think about it. The speed of these bugs was exceptionally fast. In such a short time, they had closed in considerably, surging forward like a raging flood. I quickly directed the banyan tree to gather all its aerial roots to protect the main trunk. The canopy is definitely beyond saving, but the banyan tree has a unique trait. As long as there's a piece of root left, it can continue to grow. Therefore, the most crucial part of the great banyan is its roots. Big Banyan always wanted me to stay in the heart of its tree, but I just couldn't bring myself to leave it alone. The walls and glass of the villa are made of special materials that insects cannot penetrate. But DA Rome didn't understand the strength of industrial products and just stubbornly pushed me, eventually anxiously forcing me to roll back. The next second, a dull crackling sound echoed all around. It was the sound of the swarm arriving, crashing against the tree trunks. I sat on the ground with my knees hugged to my chest, feeling heavy and oppressed inside. The floor beneath their feet trembled slightly. It seemed DA Rome was putting in a great effort to deal with the swarm of insects. In the pitch darkness, every minute and every second was excruciatingly long. I find it strange that I'm not very worried about myself, but I'm really afraid that DA Rome won't make it through. What if? I shook my head, unwilling to think further. I took out my phone and searched online, only to find that someone had already uploaded a video of the insect plague. I clicked to open it. The footage was shaky, but the image was clear. A swarm of insects flew by, their wings fluttering, and the once lush plants vanished without a trace in mere seconds. This time, the swarm isn't just locusts, but various species of insects abnormally gathering together. Some eat leaves, some eat branches, working together to devour one plant after another. The once rampant and lush greenery vanished as if erased by an eraser. Some have commented that this is nature's way of balancing the flora and fauna. I don't have such a grand vision, I just want DA Rome to survive. The space was shaking more and more violently. It seemed that the big banyan tree couldn't hold on much longer. I was so anxious that I was almost in tears, desperately trying to think of a solution. Just as I was on the verge of despair, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Once, the big banyan tree merely came into contact with the seeds of other plants and could bear the fruit of that plant. Soaking its branches in insecticide, will it acquire the properties of the insecticide? At this thought, I hurriedly ran outside. I remember there was still half a bucket of insecticide left that I hadn't had the chance to use. By the light of the flashlight, I found the half bucket of insecticide, and fortunately, it hadn't spilled much during the shaking. I called out loudly to DA Rome, and after a while, a branch weakly wrapped around my hand. Hurry, like before, quickly absorb it and finish it off. I pressed the branch into the bucket, urging it incoherently. I don't know if such a whimsical idea could bring it a glimmer of hope. But the banyan tree has brought me too many miracles, and I hope this time a miracle will happen again. I waited anxiously, and after a long while, the light gradually brightened. Outside, swarms of insects fell in droves, with new ones rushing forward to replace those that had fallen, only to plummet down like a waterfall. Success! I was almost moved to tears of joy. After a long while, the swarm of insects had completely passed. I looked out through the window, and as far as the eye could see, there was not a hint of green. The brown-yellow earth lay bare and exposed. The big banyan tree had become much more listless. This disaster had dealt it a severe blow. I fed it all the fertilizer that came with the seeds, hoping it would recover as soon as possible. When I picked up my phone, the messages in the WeChat group startled me. It was a video that lasted no more than a minute. When the swarm of insects arrived, Da Rome couldn't afford to hide anymore. Branches flew everywhere, desperately swatting at the bugs. Someone hiding in the house from the insect swarm recorded the scene with their phone. The group chat exploded. They had always thought that the big banyan tree was similar to other mutated plants, just a bit larger in size. But now, the intelligence and aggression displayed by Da Rome clearly exceeded their psychological tolerance. Some excitedly said the tree had become a spirit, while others said it was too terrifying and wanted to call the police to cut down the big banyan tree. Even the oldest villager came out and said something unprecedented: "It is a calamity." I was so angry that I rolled my eyes. What has my big banyan tree done to offend you, that you would call it a calamity as soon as you open your mouth? I was so angry that I wanted to retort, but I managed to restrain my impulse. Big Rome and I will try to lay low as much as possible. Suddenly, a WeChat message flashed by. Someone at me and asked, "Are you there? Are you still alive?" I frowned and put down my phone. From then on, the villagers' attention towards the big banyan tree noticeably increased. I often saw them circling the tree from a distance. Because as soon as they got close, Da Rome would whip them. The banyan tree was simply too massive, and the combat capabilities of both sides were not on the same level. They watched for a long time but couldn't discern anything. I tried to stay as quiet as possible and warned Da Rome to behave himself. There's no helping it, the weight of a person and a tree are not the same. If the big banyan tree doesn't harm anyone, even if the police are called, they won't go to great lengths to remove it. But hurting people is different. Protecting the public is their code of conduct, and I fear they might really eliminate the great banyan. I really wish to live peacefully like this, but life always brings unexpected events. That night, the village suddenly became noisy. I sat by the window with a telescope in my drowsy hands, simultaneously opening the WeChat group. Then, with a sudden jolt, all drowsiness vanished. There was an old man in the village who suddenly developed a high fever. His family had no medicine, and after asking around the village, no one was willing to offer any, all claiming they had none. The family was in a panic, making a big fuss. Pushing the blame back and forth, someone suddenly brought up the little girl who had been beaten after going to pick vegetables to eat when she was hungry. She said her family had no medicine, and the child was fine, so it must be that the other family had medicine, and she urged them to go ask the little girl's family. So their entire family came knocking at the door. My heart was uneasy as I observed the situation. I have no hope that they can keep the secret and not reveal the source of the medicine. Because in their eyes, this medicine had no origin to begin with. I told Darong to secretly place the medicine behind the mother and daughter, poke her with a branch, and then quickly slip away without being noticed by them. I believe in Da Rome's execution capabilities, and ordinary people wouldn't connect this matter to us. But the family in need of the medicine was too persistent. If this commotion continued, the village would soon investigate and immediately discover that none of them had brought out this bottle of medicine. I was extremely nervous, but unexpectedly, the mother didn't seem to have given me away. Because someone had already rushed forward and started punching and kicking her. My nails were almost digging into my flesh, my heart burning with rage, my teeth clenched in fury. Damn beast, even if I have the medicine, I won't give it to you. Her daughter, a small figure, kept trying to shield her mother, only to be ruthlessly thrown aside again and again. She cried loudly and said something, causing the person hitting her to stop. I have a bad feeling about this. Several people shone flashlights at the banyan tree. But it was too dark, and the flashlight couldn't illuminate much, so they gathered together, said something, and then dispersed. I don't quite believe that this matter is over just like that. Sure enough, the small mountain village fell into tranquility, while the group chat exploded. Everyone started frantically tagging me. I don't know where I slipped up, but they seemed certain of my presence in the tree, taking turns to bombard me with words. Are you there? If you're alive, why aren't you saying anything? Take out the medicine. Without it, the old man will die. Don't you feel guilty for taking a life? You can't be so selfish. Your parents grew up in this village, and you also came from here. How can you stand by and do nothing when people are dying? Do you still have food at home? Why aren't you replying? I felt as if I had fallen into an icy abyss as I read the messages in the group chat, both panicked and furious. What kind of shameless people are these? I didn't want to see the hypocritical faces in the group chat, so I simply turned off my phone and went to sleep. Seeing how angry I was, Da Rong even patted the quilt to comfort me. I didn't sleep very well, and when my biological clock woke me up in the morning, I had dark circles under both eyes. Seeing that I hadn't responded in the WeChat group, they went from playing the sympathy card to threats and insults. You just wait, can you stay up in that tree forever? When you come down, I'll kill you. Oh, sorry, I really didn't mean to go down. Do you believe I'll chop this tree down? I won't believe it unless you bring me Pan Gu's axe. Are trees afraid of fire? Right, you should be afraid of fire too. Guess whether you'll succeed in starting the fire, or will Da Rong knock you flying first? After a night's sleep, my mindset has become much calmer. I had always been worried that Da Rong and I would be discovered, but when that day finally came, I thought it over carefully and realized there wasn't much that could truly threaten us. Da Rong's combat prowess is truly formidable. If it weren't for the extreme danger, I think most people wouldn't want to engage in a fight with it under normal circumstances. After figuring it out, it seemed unnecessary to keep hiding. With Da Rong here, I don't believe they can break through Da Rong's blockade and climb 200 meters to cause me trouble. So I confidently replied in the group chat. I have already preserved evidence of the insults and slander directed at me by everyone. The internet is not a lawless place. I have now reported this to the police, and I believe there will be results soon. Such harsh words were indeed satisfying to utter, but they also made the villagers' attitude even worse. The village gathered a group of people and marched grandly toward the banyan tree. They somehow got their hands on a loudspeaker and started shouting at the tree. Come down. Let's have a proper talk with you. Come down quickly. Seeing that I wasn't moving, the words from the loudspeaker gradually turned into curses. I held my phone and recorded everything. Seeing that I remained unmoved, they actually brought gasoline to set the fire. But the big banyan tree was no pushover. Whether it was someone coming to dump trash or set a fire, it sent them all flying with a whip of its branches. Although I appeared quite arrogant on the surface, I repeatedly emphasized to Da Rong in private not to harm others excessively. Powerful yet harmless, it is its umbrella of protection. So, Da Rong always knew his limits. We struggled between us for a long time until the rescue team arrived in the village. A group of people in camouflage uniforms arrived, dusty and weary from their journey. They brought a batch of supplies and went door to door to register the population and relevant information. When it came to my turn, I hesitated for a moment and had Da Rong send me down. This is the first time in several months that my feet have touched the ground. Accustomed to the high-altitude perspective, I actually felt a bit unaccustomed when returning to the previous angle. They presented their credentials, collected information, and gave me some supplies. Inside were 5 pounds of packaged rice, a roll of dried noodles, some dried vegetables, seasonings, and some food items that were hard to identify. I don't lack these things. Seeing the dust all over them and their weary expressions, I wanted to return the items. The guy who delivered the supplies to me was about the same age as me. He smiled and said in a hoarse voice, "Take it, This is the disaster relief supplies allocated from above. There's not much, but if you use it sparingly, it should last a long time. According to them, from the moment they learned of the insect plague, the authorities urgently prepared a batch of supplies and dispatched rescue teams to the affected areas. But in many places, the situation was severe. Some were bitten to death by insects before they could take shelter in their homes, some had family members who fell ill but had no means to seek medical treatment, and others were reduced to skin and bones from starvation. There were too many incidents to handle, leaving no time to attend to other matters. By the time we reached our relatively remote mountain village, a week had already passed. I quite understand them, because I have seen with my own eyes the difficulties they face in carrying out their tasks. Those who pestered for more supplies, those who demanded solutions to various household issues, those who sought mediation for conflicts, and many who lodged complaints against me with the rescue team. That black-hearted girl made the tree hit people, and she held on to the medicine in her hand, refusing to give it to anyone, causing the death of the old folks in our village. You must arrest her quickly, and that damn tree that hurts people, it needs to be cut down too. Several villagers demanded with righteous indignation and even rushed forward in agitation, wanting to hit me. Stopped by the rescue team. I was well prepared and proactively disclosed some matters to them. I didn't mention Da Rong's extraordinary intelligence and miraculous abilities, only that the tree I had raised since childhood had mutated and still recognized me as its owner. Then show them the chat records of the villagers cursing me in the group and the videos of them causing trouble for me. They looked at Da Rong with astonished eyes, and I had Da Rong perform a branch handshake for them. I've never seen another plant online like Da Rong, one that listens to human speech, and they probably haven't either. So they cautiously requested to collect branches, leaves, and a small piece of the root from the big banyan tree, saying they would report this situation to their superiors. I felt a bit guilty inside, so I said a lot of nice things about Da Rong. Seeing me so nervous, they even comforted me. It's all right, comrade, you don't need to be too nervous. We've been to many places and have seen some special plants. The higher-ups are more inclined towards observation, protection, and research, and won't easily exterminate them. Moreover, the villagers' actions towards me have constituted a crime, but since they lack law enforcement authority, they have preserved the evidence to submit to the police station. I let out a long sigh, and the tension in my heart eased slightly. It's pretty much what I thought before. There are too many new species after the plant mutations, and they are very cautious about their attitude before the effects and hazards are confirmed. I just wish to be with Da Rong in the mountains, living happily as a person and a tree. As the rescue team left, they sternly warned the villagers. Seeing that even the soldiers could do nothing about me, the villagers watched helplessly and resentfully as I returned to the tree. I rearranged the villa. A large portion of the villa was now empty, giving me much more space to move around. It's not because I used up too much, but because I just had Da Rong secretly transport some supplies to the rescue team's vehicle. Previously, I had stockpiled a lot of dried vegetables and fruits, but after having Da Rong, I no longer lacked fresh produce, so I gave most of the dried goods to them. Rather than letting these supplies sit idle here, it's better to let them help those in greater need. Although I was afraid they wouldn't accept it, so I secretly placed it there, I didn't do a good deed without leaving my name. Instead, I left a note specifying that it was a donation for the rescue team. Even if it could add just a little more impression points for Da Rong, it would be worth it. Since the rescue team last came, the villagers have all quieted down. No longer shouting in the streets, nor making small moves from time to time. My days have become comfortable again. With nothing else to do, I started improving my cooking skills. Today, we'll make cookies, macarons, and various desserts. Tomorrow, we'll stew pork bones with sauce, paired with candied sweet potatoes. Plus, I haven't been exercising much, so I don't even dare to step on the scale anymore, afraid that the original 2-digit number might turn into 3 digits. As long as I don't know, I'm not fat. I deceived myself into thinking. I leaned against the window, gazing at the distant mountains while savoring my homemade strawberry taro milk tea. At this moment, I suddenly noticed that quite a few people had entered the village. Have more rescue teams arrived? I looked through the telescope and then realized something was wrong. In sight were a few familiar villagers, leading some strangers into the house. There were about 30 of them, each carrying large and small bags in their hands. If at this point it could still be understood as someone coming to the village to visit relatives, then what followed was enough to put me on alert. When that group of people came out of the house again, they were all unexpectedly wearing military uniforms. Moreover, the leader was talking to the villagers while pointing in my direction. Is he really a soldier? No, that can't be. Military uniforms are always worn by soldiers. There's no such thing as changing into civilian clothes at a civilian's home. Moreover, the demeanor of those people was off. They lacked any semblance of efficiency or competence, moving about in a disorganized manner with unsteady steps and constant fidgeting in their hands. Seeing their obviously hostile demeanor, my heart grew tense. The group of people arrived under the tree with an aggressive demeanor, shouting through a loudspeaker. People above, listen up, please come down immediately and cooperate with the work. I shouted several times in a row, feeling utterly speechless. Is this an attempt to trick me into going down? Pretending to be state officials, these people are really something. I took out my phone and dialed the emergency number. After explaining the situation to the police, they advised me to stay low and protect my personal safety, as they would dispatch officers immediately. The police station is quite a distance from here. It will take them at least 2 hours to arrive. But I wasn't too worried. With DA Rong around, they couldn't possibly break through his blockade and pose a threat to me. They shouted persistently for a long time, exhausting every possible tactic. I made up my mind to ignore them, so no matter what they shouted from below, I pretended as if I didn't exist. After a tense standoff, a sudden boom of an explosion came from below. The big banyan tree instantly became frenzied, its branches shooting out in unison. I was so startled that I jumped up and rushed to the window to look down. They saw the people below throw something at the roots of the big banyan tree, and it exploded with a deafening roar the moment it landed. Da Rong tried hard to intercept with branches, but they timed it perfectly. The objects exploded before he could catch them. I saw that the bags they brought were filled to the brim with this kind of stuff. Homemade bomb. My heart turned ice cold. To resort to such illegal weapons, these people have no intention of letting this go. A portion of the banyan tree's branches, leaves, and roots were blown to pieces, and burning embers scattered everywhere. In the face of overwhelming firepower, the immobile banyan tree could only passively endure the blows. It still remembered my instructions and, no matter what, refrained from using its branches to attack those people. Forget what I said earlier, Da Rong, I hurriedly told it. Quick, use your branches to wrap them up. The big banyan tree was also severely injured by the explosion, and it obediently extended its branches to attack them. The banyan tree grew quickly, but its roots were not as deep and long as those of a steadily growing tree. Moreover, after the previous insect disaster, it was severely weakened, with the longest branches reaching only a little over 200 meters. The people were startled when the branches shot towards them like pythons, but the leader shouted, and they ran back a distance, out of reach of the banyan tree. Then they escalated by throwing bombs. I was almost on the verge of breaking down, opened the window, and shouted at the top of my lungs through the loudspeaker. Are you all crazy? Stop it now. Impersonating a police officer, making explosives to attack others, each of these is enough to land you in jail. I've already recorded all your actions. If you leave now, I'll pretend this never happened. But if you continue, I'll call the police. The people below looked up at me upon hearing the sound, their expressions filled with smugness and disdain, as if saying, you were pretending to be dead earlier, but now you've come to beg us. They showed no intention of stopping at all. The ground beneath their feet shook violently, and the great banyan tree, as it had done before with the insects, wrapped its aerial roots around its base. But human cunning was on a different level from that of the insects. They occasionally threw bombs in other directions to lure Da Rong into blocking them, then concentrated the remaining bombs in a single spot. They laughed heartily while hurting Da Rong. I was trembling all over, desperately calling the police, but the response I got was that they would take another hour to arrive. Can Da Rong hold on for an hour? I was in tears. I was filming a video, uploading it to the internet, while trying to negotiate with them. I called the police as soon as you arrived. They'll be here any moment. I've already posted your actions online. No matter where you run to the ends of the earth, the police will catch you. What do you want? I'll give you anything. Just stop. Da Rong's movements grew increasingly feeble. The roots being blown apart caused it too much harm, and the fire was slowly starting to spread. It wrapped me up with its branches, and I knew it wanted to send me away. I clung to it desperately, refusing to let go. At this moment, my mind was completely blank, and I had already cast aside any thought of life or death. The hatred in my heart burns fiercer than fire. I can't accept this. All I wanted was to live a peaceful life with Darong, so why did something like this have to happen? The ground split open, and chunks of the ceiling fell. I was well protected by the big banyan tree and didn't suffer a single injury. But its movements were becoming increasingly sluggish. I closed my eyes, my heart filled with despair, unaware that at some point, the earth-shattering explosion that had left me dizzy had ceased. After a long while, a steady voice reached my ears. It's all right, comrade. I suddenly raised my eyes and, through the shattered tree trunk, saw towering columns of water and steam. The sunlight poured in unreservedly for the first time, and I saw a helicopter hovering outside. I cried until my dry eyes shed tears once more. A month ago, after the rescue team returned, they reported the incident involving Da Rong to the higher-ups and submitted the collected samples. Originally, the authorities didn't pay much attention to the big banyan tree, as there were many special plants reported, and the big banyan was considered a mild-tempered one that could be dealt with later. But when the lab analyzed Da Rong's sample, Da Rong was immediately taken seriously. Back then, Da Rong extracted the insecticide and successfully simulated its toxicity, holding off the insect swarm. After conducting experiments, they discovered that Da Rong's samples could simulate the absorbed components to a certain extent, and they considered this to be a very important characteristic. So, the authorities dispatched a unit, accompanied by researchers, to conduct studies on the Great Banyan. When I called the police, they were already almost there. Hearing the distant explosion, they immediately sped up, which allowed them to rescue me and Darong just in time. Some of the villagers in the village, along with those who dropped the bombs, were all placed under criminal detention. They were all in cahoots, somehow finding out that I had once purchased a large amount of supplies, so they made their own weapons and prepared to rob me. At first, they really intended to trick me into coming down, but when they saw I wasn't falling for it, they resorted to force directly. Multiple crimes combined, the minimum sentence is estimated to be no less than 10 years. At this moment, the fire on the big banyan tree had been extinguished, but 2/3 of its roots were destroyed, leaving the entire tree on the verge of death. I stood under the tree wrapped in a blanket, feeling sorry for it while anxiously watching the researchers bustling around it. Perhaps sensing my thoughts, they explained to me. Because the characteristics of the big banyan tree are somewhat unique, they will collect materials and conduct experiments appropriately without harming it. They patiently reassured me that they were a legitimate official research institute, not one of those illegal organizations, and that they would treasure the miracle of the Great Banyan Tree. If I'm not at ease, I can stay at the institute as Da Rong's guardian. Ah! Are you going to move the big banyan tree? No, they laughed, it's the research branch that's moving here. The remaining villagers in the village were all relocated, and the research institute was built at a rapid pace. They prepared a lot of nutrient solutions and nutrient-rich soil to help the big banyan tree recover, and gradually, it regained its vitality. I no longer live in the trees, but work in the laboratory, specifically responsible for soothing the big banyan. In the following years, they achieved many research results on Da Rong. With the help of Da Rong, the mutated vegetables and fruits were combined with the non-mutated ones, resulting in the development of a new variety that was both large and sweet. People will never again eat disgusting food until they vomit, as they did in their past lives. The calamities gradually subsided, yet the plants and trees remained lush and vigorous. The territories that humans had encroached upon from nature were all spat back out, and it was clearly impossible to reclaim them again. People will continue to progress through reflection, holding reverence for nature, and find new paths.